There is a moment quiet, almost vapor-thin, when an American steps into a foreign environment and feels something shift beneath the surface of their awareness. It isn't dramatic. It isn't fear. It is more like an internal echo, a tremor that ripples under the calm exterior of the mind. They look around, take in the unfamiliar surroundings, and feel a subtle unease rising from a place they never realized existed. It is not the sense of danger that unsettles them. It is the sensation of disappearance. Because for many Americans, the first real culture clash isn't language, food, or etiquette. The real shock is silence, not the silence of empty rooms or abandoned streets. The world around them is still alive with footsteps, murmured conversations, clinking cups, humming elevators, and trains breaking against the rails. Everything sounds normal. But something essential is missing. It is the absence of acknowledgment. The small, nearly invisible social stitches that bind daily American life together simply aren't there. The nods, the smiles, the greetings, the constant, reassuring pulse of micro-validation that Americans inhale from childhood as naturally as oxygen. And when those signals vanish, something new fills the space they once occupied. A sensation that starts softly and then grows, quietly but unmistakably. A voice inside whispers, "No one sees me." Not literally, of course. People look your way. They hand you receipts, menus, train tickets. They say thank you, excuse me, here you go. But they don't perform recognition. They don't charge the air with friendliness. They don't radiate warmth as default. They move around you without acknowledging your emotional existence. And you're mind-trained to interpret social cues like radar feels, the missing data as a threat. Something in the American psyche reacts to that silence. Something learned so early and so deeply that most never recognize its shape until it stops being reflected back at them. This is the beginning of the invisibility reflex. It doesn't arrive in one dramatic blow. It emerges through tiny scenes, each ordinary, each harmless, yet each containing a quiet psychological shockwave. Scene 1. The elevator. An Ankingen, American couple steps into a hotel lift in Zurich or Amsterdam or Vienna. The doors slide shut behind them. Two locals are already standing inside, calm, silent, existing in their own private bubbles. They don't smile. They don't greet. They don't perform the quick, automatic acknowledgment that Americans see as good manners. The Americans wait for the ritual to begin. The shared nod, the weather joke, the polite laugh. But the lift rises in pure social neutrality. No engagement. No warmth. No signal that says, "I see you. You are recognized. We share this moment." For 20 seconds, nothing happens. But inside the American mind, a soft alarm begins to sound, like a radio drifting out of tune. The elevator doors open. They step out and exhale without realizing they were holding their breath. "That felt awkward," one of them says. "Why were they so cold? Did we do something wrong?" But the truth is simple. Nothing happened. Nothing at all. For the locals, the ride was perfectly normal. For the Americans, it was an unexpected vacuum where validation usually lives, a tiny moment where they felt invisible. Scene 2. The grocery aisle. In a Scandinavian supermarket. An American stands still, basket in hand. They are not confused by the layout. They are not lost. They are simply waiting, waiting for someone to notice them, waiting for an employee to look up and approach, waiting for the ritual they've known all their lives. Back home, standing still in an aisle is like turning on an invisible beacon. Within minutes, a helpful voice appears. Can I help you find something? Doing okay? Just checking on you. But here, in this quiet, orderly Nordic store, the staff move with calm efficiency and give customers deep space. Not aloofness, respect. They do not hover. They do not interrupt browsing. They will gladly help, but only if asked that, so the American waits. And waits. And waits a little longer. Minutes drift by. A strange feeling grows behind the ribs, a kind of emotional static. Why isn't anyone helping me? Am I supposed to approach them? What if I'm interrupting? What was meant to be a simple errand becomes an unexpected test of autonomy. A reminder that independence can feel cold when you've been trained to expect guided hospitality. Scene 3. The museum. In Rome, Paris, or Vienna, an American family enters a museum expecting structure, a path, a guide, some authority directing the experience. Instead, they find only a map. A beautifully designed one, but still just a map. A map that implies, you can figure this out. To locals, this is normal. To Americans, many raised with curated experiences, narrated tours, and guided education, it feels like sudden responsibility. They look at the map and see not guidance, but a maze. Not clarity, but expectation. Why isn't anyone directing us? Who tells us where to begin? How do we know if we're doing this right? A museum, one of the simplest spaces to navigate, becomes a mirror. And in that mirror, the American traveler sees something they've never examined closely, how deeply they rely on visible structure to feel secure. These moments matter. Individually, they are mild, harmless, even humorous. But together, they reveal something profound about cultural wiring. Americans are raised in a social atmosphere where acknowledgment equals safety, warmth equals politeness, interaction equals respect, and supervision equals hospitality. From early childhood, life is filled with micro-instruction. Say hello. Use your inside voice. Smile for the cashier. Greet the teacher. Tell the waiter how you're doing. Make others feel comfortable. Show friendliness. Project warmth. These rituals are not meaningless. They are the glue of American social structure, a universal language in a country too large and diverse to rely on subtlety. But there is a cost. These habits also become emotional scaffolding, a structure that quietly whispers, "We see you. You are safe here. You belong because we acknowledge you." So, when Americans enter cultures where autonomy is the default, where silence is respect, and neutrality is politeness, they lose that scaffolding. The environment stops performing confirmation signals, and the mind, deprived of its usual cues, begins to ask, if no one is validating me, what does that mean? For Europeans, it means nothing. For Americans, it can mean everything. This is where the divide becomes visible. Not in what people do, but in what those actions mean. American social logic teaches that warmth is politeness, engagement is safety, interaction is social glue, and service is emotional support. A waiter checks often because it signals care. A barista asks your name because it signals welcome. A greeter says hello because it signals security. These signals are not optional extras. They are the foundation. European social logic teaches that neutrality is politeness, privacy is respect, autonomy is safety, and service is functional. A waiter approaches only when needed because it shows respect. A barista hands you your drink because that is the transaction. A store clerk doesn't hover because they trust you to manage your own space. No performance. No emotional padding. No unrequested social energy. When these two systems meet, the result is not conflict. It is confusion, both sides genuinely believing the other is behaving strangely. Ask Europeans about Americans and they'll say, "They're so friendly. They smile so much. They talk so easily." Ask Americans about Europeans and they'll say, "They're distant. They're cold. They're unfriendly." Both interpretations are incomplete. Both are translations based on each culture's emotional grammar. Americans show respect by engaging. Europeans show respect by not intruding. One says, "I acknowledge you because you matter." The other says, "I leave you alone because you matter." Two opposite behaviors. One shared intention. But the traveler rarely sees that deeper truth in the moment. They feel the silence. They feel the absence of expected cues. They feel the gap between their training and the world in front of them. And that gap feels like erasure. There is a particular moment, subtle, profound, that many Americans experience abroad. It arrives slowly, then all at once. It may happen on a train, in a café, while walking through an unfamiliar neighborhood, or while sitting alone on a bench watching the quiet flow of a foreign street. It is the moment they realize, I am not the center of anyone's attention. I am not responsible for the comfort of strangers. They are not responsible for mine. I exist here quietly, without performance or expectation. For someone raised in a world of mutual acknowledgment, this realization can be disorienting. Because in the American context, to be seen is to be safe. To be greeted is to be welcomed. To be checked on is to be valued. Remove those signals, and the brain interprets it as danger, even when danger isn't present. This is the heart of the invisibility reflex, not literal invisibility, but emotional invisibility. A moment when the self feels unreferenced by the environment. For some, the feeling is deeply uncomfortable. For others, unexpectedly liberating, because something interesting happens when the shock subsides. Americans begin to adjust. They begin to observe more and perform less. They begin to breathe differently in the silence. The world stops feeling indifferent and starts feeling spacious, and slowly something new emerges. Without constant validation, a different kind of confidence grows. A quieter one. A self-generated one. Not built on external cues. Not dependent on social feedback. Not tied to acknowledgment from strangers. A confidence rooted in autonomy. They realize they can navigate alone. Order alone. Decide alone. Move alone. Not because they must, but because the culture trusts they can. The internal shift is profound. What first felt like "no one sees me" transforms into "I don't need to be seen to exist." That realization lands differently for every traveler. For some, it is empowerment. For others, an unraveling. But for nearly everyone who stays long enough, it becomes a new kind of freedom. When they return to the United States, something strange happens. The old environment, once invisible in its familiarity, now feels amplified. The greetings, the smiles, the constant Affirmations. The check-ins, the eagerness to help. The warmth woven into every interaction. It feels louder, brighter, more deliberate. Some find it comforting, like stepping into a warm, familiar bath. Others find it overwhelming, like returning to a room where all the lights have been left on. But nearly everyone recognizes the contrast. America speaks in acknowledgment. Europe speaks in permission. America says, "We see you. Therefore you belong." Europe says, "You belong." No announcement required. Two social languages. Two emotional climates. Two visions of politeness. Both valid, both coherent, both beautiful, but deeply, structurally different. So why do Americans feel invisible abroad? Because they come from a culture where visibility is part of the social contract, where the absence of acknowledgement is coded as danger, dislike, or disrespect. Meanwhile, in much of Europe, the absence of acknowledgement is coded as privacy, trust, and autonomy. Same behavior, opposite meaning. Silence in an elevator isn't coldness, it's normal. Being left alone in the cafe isn't neglect, it's respect. Self-navigation isn't abandonment, it's an invitation to independence. The result isn't hostility. It's mismatched assumptions about what it means to be polite. In the end, the greatest shift isn't about understanding Europe. It's about understanding oneself, because the moment an American truly grasps that silence abroad isn't rejection, it's trust, something opens inside them. Something steady, something calm. A doorway into a new kind of presence, a presence that doesn't depend on external cues. A presence that doesn't require constant reflection, a presence that exists quietly, confidently, without performance. And through that doorway, the world looks different, others look different, and the self looks different. Are visible even when no one signals it. You matter even when no one validates it. You belong even when no one announces it. And perhaps most importantly, invisibility is not the opposite of being seen. It is the beginning of seeing differently.